Alright, so I found another audio track to this song. Now let's test this one to see if it's any less muddy. Um, now, no, it's not that much different from the other one. It's still slightly muddy. Now, when I say muddy, I mean your beats, your bass hits are not 1, 2, 3, 4. They vary in where they begin. See, this is a good one, but you can see looking at this entire section though, I'm not finding a sharp bass hit at all. That is usually a sign of a bad chart or a bad track to be charting. One of these that do not have obvious intervals. Now I'm going to come back and I'm going to actually replace the audio file. Now this is actual MP3, so I'm going to... Now one of the big things you should be doing if you're going to ever convert an MP3 to an OGG, you should always do it during your syncing process. You should never make a chart and then just convert the music file and then expect the sync to be perfectly the same. So I'm going to go ahead and turn this into an OGG. I'm going to do, now the native bitrate of this song is 256. Now I'm going to take that song out actually. Nope. And put it into my test folder. I'll get rid of the old music file. I'm actually going to get rid of those as well. Alright, so this is our OGG file, and I'm going to just rename it so that I don't have to rename the file in the SM file. Now let's reboot Stepmania, and let's drag the relevant sound file into Audacity. Okay, so that is working. Now let's get our offset. Now we're going to come back here and have the same exact dilemma as we had before. So again, now if I remember correctly, the discrepancy was something like 47 milliseconds difference. Now looking at this now and seeing a discrepancy tells me already that there was something wrong with your music file that you started with. Now I don't know what you did. It could be just the file that you downloaded. Now let's try our Mixmeister BPM analyzer again on the file that I got. Alright, so this one is still saying the 90 BPM, which double that to normalize it, it's 180. So it's roughly the same, and it's not giving us the exact same BPM either. So I think that's important to note as well. Now, I'm looking for a really nice and sharp instrumental sound.
I could feel the love, can you feel it too? I could feel it, I could feel it, you know I said it's true. I could feel love, can you feel the love, can you feel?
Okay, so I don't want to use that because there is layering of a vocal with the instrument. So again, I'm going to keep listening in.
I could feel it, you know I said it's true. I could feel the love, can you feel it too? I could feel it, I could feel it, yeah. You know I said it's true. I could feel the love, can you feel it too? I could feel it, I could feel it, I could feel it, yeah.
Okay, so since I'm having such a hard time, I think I'm just going to do this visually and look for a nice lone spike. Now again, I don't want to use that one. Okay. That one looks... no, I don't want to use that one. Okay, this one looks pretty good. Let's listen in. Okay, that's a synth instrument. I'm looking for a percussion instrument now. Okay, so this is a pretty good sharp beat, but look how far in we are actually. Alright, I'm gonna step things back. Now, just as a note, if I spend this much time looking only for an offset, I've already scrapped this song, and I'm just gonna say I wouldn't even deal with it at this point. It's a really good song. I would like if I could get the chart synced so that it would be fun to play, but anyway, I guess I'll persevere because I said I would at least give it an honest effort. So I'm going to say this is something. No, that's no. I really want unambiguous interval to set my offset to. But it doesn't look like I'm going to get that anywhere at the beginning of the song, which is really unfortunate because then that throws off our sync throughout the entire song. And I really don't want to set an offset to somewhere a minute already into the song. That is definitely not something I want to do. So I think I think maybe our best bet is to just go with the muddy beginning. So we're going to sync here. Now that is 11,794. And I believe our BPM is still, yeah, it is, because I didn't save. So I'm going to normalize this. Okay, so now let's find that point at around 54 seconds in. Because I really liked the way those spikes looked.
I can feel it.
Okay, so we see how there's this pattern and then this dip here and then our spike. So we're going to go to the top of the spike, note the time here, the beginning, so 54 point.
I can feel it.
54.793. Okay, so now this is really interesting. So before we were having issues with the sync because it was not showing or not lining up with our offset, but just simply replacing the music track fixed our drifting problems. Now I don't know what you did or what post-processing you did to the actual music file, but our number here, so 54.793, is matching up here with 54.793. Now you can round this up to 59 or 50, yeah, 54.794, but for all intents and purposes, the 1 millisecond I'll forgive. It's not really a big deal, but it looks like what we have now is a lot better. Now let's do some more work. Let's check another point in this build-up. Alright, so here's another peak. Now this one's kind of ambiguous. Let's see if we can find another one. It's less ambiguous. Okay, this one's a little less ambiguous. I like this one a little bit more. That's about where it peaks. Now you can also do this. You can also say, okay, it's 2 milliseconds, so not really that big of a deal. So 62.125 is what we're looking for. Okay, so actually from the very top is what we're getting, so 62.127. So what it looks like now is that we have a consistent sync. It looks like the problems are fixed so far. So let's find a similar or repeated build-up later in the song and start syncing from there, ideally to use the same instrument and same section to find whether or not we are getting the same sync consistency. Yeah. Now that's actually a change of tempo. I don't want to actually use that. I don't want to just blindly put my cursor in there, because that tempo is actually different than the tempo that we were listening to before. But this build-up is still appropriate. Now let's go here. We found an amplitude. We found our peak in the amplitude. Now let's see where that corresponds. 188.12 or 121. Okay, so we're 6 milliseconds off, which isn't too bad. Now I'm almost wondering if the songs are different, because I had actually listened to the other chart, so this is actually weird news. Because I haven't actually seen this yet, I'm going to actually go to the other chart and see what is going on around here, because your steps don't really match up. Maybe the music track I found was different. So we're around 188. Okay, here we are. Okay, yeah, so the music file that I found, I'm sorry. Let's go way farther. That was my fault. Never mind. This is where I got confused. Okay, so this is your file. Now, this file, for this section, these steps don't make any sense at all. Now, there's bass hits on the jumps. No, actually not. The bass hits are actually on the singles. Ooh, it's actually so off sync that it's not on either. Okay, So let's trash your music file entirely, for sure. So I'm not going to even look at that file anymore. Now let's go back to the 188 we were looking at. So now I'm not really looking at sync anymore. Now I'm almost looking at your rhetoric now, just because we stumbled upon it as part of the syncing process. Now, so there are bass hits on the singles, but there's nothing going on at the jumps. Now, you can do one of two things at this section. One, you can take out the jumps and make it really easy and go only to the bass hits. Or you can go to the vocals. So, no. Whoops. Now I'm just changing this to my personal read speed. Okay, so the vocals aren't going to be very on sync either, but they're a lot more interesting than just doing the bass hits. So do you see the difference between that and this? It doesn't really make any sense at all. That makes a lot more sense to just go to the vocals. Now I also can hear a bass line. But that would be just plain fourths and eighths, which I think you would have a harder time hearing on a cabinet. Now I can hear a bass line and it's going to the fourths and eighths. And it just goes through this section. I think it's going to repeat. I'm pretty sure it will. Okay, it doesn't. It does a little funky things, but personally I would go with the lyrics. It's a lot easier, because if you actually sit there and try to flesh out the bass line in this section, it's not really worth it, because you won't really honestly be able to hear it when you play on a cabinet, unless it's cranked up really high or you have some really decent speakers in the machine. So I'm going to say go with the vocals. Now, this pattern doesn't actually mean anything. I'm just putting something in. Okay. And then there is an almost call. The singer is calling, responsing with himself. I know that's an odd way to say that, but there is a call and response kind of refrain. echo. Okay, so the vocal picks up here and actually slurs into here, but the major part of the vocal is actually on the eighth, or on the fourth, I mean, the fourth note. So I'm going to say, let's just, this is brainstorming now. So here's your vocal section, and then here is your call and response echo section. Now it's really muddy though because it's vocals and it's really off. So it's kind of tough. Maybe instead on the refrain use minds, because I really don't like the sync at this point, and you're really not going to alter the sync of the entire track just to accommodate those two vocals. So maybe use minds here instead. And then, so your build-up is also wrong. So here, your build-up is actually your. Wow, I tried to say two things at once. So you're subdividing the build-up. So here, the actual build-up is actually on the fourth notes only. So ignore the blue notes altogether. And then here you're subdividing again, where it should actually be fourths and eighths. And then here it's your 16th notes. Oops. Now, it's like I said before, this is kind of a change of tempo. It's almost like a swing tempo. I personally would second guess streaming through this. I would personally make some kind of alternate pattern where it's not a stream, or closer to the actual rhythm going on here, because it does feel weird, at least to me, to stream through this kind of a tempo. So it's da 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 da. Here's the tempo. So da 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 da. This is not a fourth note. This is actually a 12th note, or closer to a 12th note. It's not. It may not actually be a 12th note, but it's closer to one. So see the difference in this tempo? Actually, that was off. That's actually here. So, one more time. Now, there's a double step there. I know. Okay, so do you at least see what I mean, where there's a tempo change, and it's kind of weird? Maybe you can make some kind of break portion on an easier difficulty, or maybe just stream because this is the expert difficulty. But definitely pattern accordingly. Maybe make an easier pattern to this section. Now, I've said that the sync is actually pretty good now that I've replaced the music track. So while we're here, towards the end, let's actually test our sync at some ending interval. Now this is, again, okay, so 214, 786. Okay, so this is off by about what is it? 6 milliseconds. So 214, 794 minus 214, 786. So you're 8 milliseconds off. Now we can say give or take the 1 because of this, or we can say that that's a bad interval. Now I'm not going to really sweat a drift of 6 milliseconds because I'm already really frustrated with the sync on this chart to begin with. Alright, here's another decent interval. Because I've seen as well, if you pick a random interval in a song, it may be a few milliseconds on or off, or on or off, a few seconds interval plus or minus off by a little bit. So let's just check this one and see if we're still about 6 milliseconds off. So we're at 218, 450. Okay, so this is 10 milliseconds off. That's even more off than before. So from here we can do one of two things. We can say, well, I'm really frustrated with this and I don't want to chart this anymore. We can also say, let's find where it actually starts drifting and correct it, because that usually means, one, there was a bad cut made by the author or the actual syn file author, but there isn't actually, I didn't actually cut this song. This song is actually it's the original. It's the original length. So I'm going to say that this chart is going to probably start drifting at that tempo change part here-ish. And that entire section is that alternate weird tempo. So I'm going to completely ignore it and say that there is some kind of drift that shows up in here somewhere. And then just looking in here is too muddy to really sync to anything. So I can't even oh, this is a really good one. This is a really good sync point. Let's take this, see where it goes. $182, $450. Okay, so we're 10 milliseconds off. So that leads me to believe that the 10 millisecond drift happened somewhere in here. So it's possible that the song author made some kind of incorrect or improper cut in his own song while he was making it. Now, I'm constantly seeing a 10 millisecond delay. So that is what leads me to believe that it is some kind of cut error and not a drifting BPM error. Because if it were a BPM error where the BPM actually changes somewhere in here, that would indicate, or that would be indicated by the discrepancy being 10 milliseconds, then 9 milliseconds, then 8 milliseconds, or the vice versa, 8, 9, 10, getting later and later and later, or earlier. So the BPM is fine. I'm not changing the BPM. So now we have to track down where exactly the incorrect cut was made. So the only way to really do that is to look at intervals constantly and see, okay, I'm on, I'm good, I'm good, I'm good, I'm good. And then eventually you'll find where you're 10 milliseconds off. And then from there, you can just use a BPM correction to fix it, and then the rest of the song will be on sync. So let's try to find that point where we go off. I have a hunch that it's in here, but from actual experience looking for these improper artist cuts, they can be anywhere. They can be in the middle of a section that you would never imagine would have a cut error. So you kind of have to go into it just being really persistent. I can show you that example, but that's kind of really off track and getting really sidetracked, so I won't even bother showing you where I've had that issue before. So let's listen in. Okay, that's a pretty decent bass hit, but let's find a better one. Okay, so that horn is going to really make my life difficult. Because when you layer an imperfect instrument on top of a perfect instrument, it really, honestly, it really screws things up. Okay, so there was a break in the trumpet. Okay. So I like this point right here. So we see a nice progression, and this looks almost like our 32 millisecond difference. Okay, no, it's not. Anyway, so let's use this point and see how off this is. Now we're at 131, 131.8. Or I'm sorry, 131.2. 287. Okay. Alright, so I'm not hearing what I was hearing on the waveform, which is odd. Okay, now I hear it. So right now we are off. If we're off by 6 milliseconds, then I'm going to call it 6 and 10 millisecond off, drifting between 6 and 10, which I have seen before where a chart will drift between two different numbers for whatever reason. So 294 minus what we expect, which is 131 point. All right, so I'm going to say somewhere between 0.289 and 0.290. So we are our 4 and 5 milliseconds off. So maybe perhaps there is a very small BPM change. It's also possible because it's such a small discrepancy now, I've gotten it down to a very minuscule discrepancy that you can just say, oh well, this is taking way too long, and just say, okay, this is what we're going with. And we can also try to find another interval. Again, I'm going to reiterate that this song is really not fun to sync. I personally wouldn't have gotten this far in the step chart making process. I would have already scrapped this song by now. Okay, let's do this one instead. So 131.780. Okay, so 788 minus, so we're 6 milliseconds off. We're still doing 6 milliseconds off, it looks like. So that cut error is not in here, it's now in here somewhere. Now the last point that we really agreed with was somewhere around 54 seconds, I believe. So it's very possible that somewhere in one of these refrain sections where we switch up the instruments, that there was some kind of imperfect cut made by the artist. But again, I really don't want to use this interval because it ramps up. It's not a marked spike. We can look at this just for fun anyway, just see where we're at. Okay, so we're 8 milliseconds off at this point, but it's not even a good point to be going off of anyway, so I'm really not going to use that. Okay, this was the build-up we were using. Okay, so we're perfect. 61,459, and you can see here where we're just under. So just based on rounding errors by Stepmania, we're off by 1 millisecond. I'm going to forget it. I mean, you can see here. You can basically round this to, or actually round it down. But anyway, no big deal. We're off by 1 millisecond, I guess. More like 2, but anyway, I'll just call it good here at this point. So that means the build-up was. Now let's check this. So this is where the chart drifts by the 10 or so milliseconds. So we see 64,788, 64, and now over here it's 64,73 or 793. So this is about where we get the 6 millisecond discrepancy. It's here somewhere. We're getting closer. Now, I don't know if I dare to really be checking 16th notes. 63, 7, 9. Okay, so we're 2 milliseconds off here, just like we were before, so we said that we were going to forget it. So indeed, this is the section where we get 6 milliseconds off, and then this section will begin at 6 milliseconds off. So what I'm going to say I don't really care about being 2 milliseconds off and then randomly 6 milliseconds off when we hit this note here. Just for consistency's sake, because if we're going to be playing this chart and then out of nowhere kind of change the sync abruptly in the middle of a 16th note run or stream or burst or whatever you want to call it, that's kind of inappropriate. So instead we'll bump the song here by the 6 milliseconds, and then the rest of the song will actually be on. Now, let's make absolute sure that what we're doing is going to be somewhat correct. So right here we're at 65, 1, 127. So let's find 65, 127 in here. Okay, so you can see how far we're off. This is where the chart is right now. We're at 65, 127, where we should actually be 6 milliseconds earlier, where you can see the waveform starts to spike. Now this is ambiguous, where I said that it ramps up to a peak altitude of about here, but I really want to start with maybe around here is a better idea. But I really want to get the 6 millisecond difference, so we're gonna or the 7. So we're gonna start here. So this now needs to say 65, 119. So now we're going to use BPM tactics. And actually, I want to know if there were any gimmicks. I don't actually know. Now, if there were gimmicks, that means that the chart was drifting because of improper gimmicks. So you don't have any gimmicks or BPM changes. So we don't have to worry about that. So we know, one, the drift is not because of an incorrect BPM. It's not because of an incorrect cut, because I did not cut this song when I replaced the audio track. And we know now that it has to be some kind of improper cut by the author. And I mean, you can honestly see that in here, where there's kind of a refrain nothing section in here, so there's definitely room for some kind of human error. So anyway, like I said, we're going to make the beginning of this section match up with this, with the waveform where it starts. So this needs to say 65, 119. So we're going to change the BPM. We're going to nudge the BPM until we get the millisecond value that we want. So we can see how, alright, I went the wrong way. So I increased the BPM, and that's going to, by increasing the BPM, that makes the song go faster. So we're going to bring the song earlier, which is what we want. So we want 65, 119. We need to go a little farther, or a little bit. We need to backtrack a little bit. Okay, so 69, 119. Let's see if we can get it closer. So see how we have the four, 4, 6. I really want to get the rounding error to go down as much as possible. 202. Okay, so 64. Let's see. Can we do 26? Okay, so 184.6. Now I know that you could actually do the math out, but it really doesn't matter. Honestly, we can just play with it by bumping it. 26, so let's keep bumping it until we get closer to 0, or closer to no remainder is what I mean. So 26. Almost there. See how we're 003. Okay, that was too far. Okay, so I think that 003 is the best we're going to get, because I really don't want to use a BPM that is more precise than the 1,000th place, because it will get rounded by Stepmania's rounding mechanism anyway, so it really doesn't, so the excess precision in the BPM really won't matter. So let's get back to where I was, over 003. Okay, so like I said, this excess precision really doesn't matter. So now we have the timing that we want, so we're going to change the BPM back to the flat BPM. So this is what I was talking about, using some weird BPM, speeding up the BPM or slowing it down to change the offset in a section that you wouldn't actually care about because you're not actually stepping in it, so it really doesn't matter that we change the sync or the offset at this point because you're not actually stepping inside of it. You're not going to actually have to deal with that 7 millisecond difference. Now, so we've got the sync that we want. So I'm going to actually save this now. And this feels a lot better now. Yeah, that feels a lot more in sync now that I did that. Now this is probably vocals, right? Yeah, this is kind of muddy. Alright, so yeah, that feels a lot better. Like I said, in this section, in the beat down is what I'll call it, we're between 6 and 10 milliseconds off. Well, we changed the off sync by 7 milliseconds. So that should remedy it. Now it should be between dead on and 3 milliseconds off. So I'll forgive, like I said, I can forgive the 3 milliseconds being off, just because of how muddy this song is in the first place. So I'm actually gonna say this chart is synced now. Really, all that's left is to actually go back through and look through those rhetorical errors that I was starting to point out. I'll leave that for another time, just because that could take just as long. I'm pretty sure that this video is going to be a lot longer than I wanted it to be anyway. So anyway, I hope this helped a little bit. you can at least see my thought process. I don't know if you're the type that really wants a very structured, concrete method, but I hope that at least seeing someone struggle through syncing something that's really difficult to sync, you can see the process unfold and learn from it, so that when you find yourself in the same situation, you'll be able to fix it later on. Or fix it before you even step the chart. Anyway, alright. Well, I guess that concludes everything. Good luck with syncing. If you have any other questions, you can PM me on AIJ or R21. My handle is Horsey on both, Horsey, not HORSIE, that's wrong, HORSEY. Alright, so I'll see you guys later.